Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Forum Americas is brought to you by Metallo Royalty and Streaming.
Mine growth and now pipeline growth for Torex. Hello and welcome to Kitco Mining with me, Paul Harris, at the 2025 Mining Forum Americas in Colorado Springs. Joining me today is Jody Kuzenko, President and CEO of Torex Mines. Jody, welcome back to Kitco.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really pleased to have you here. It's been quite a sort of transformational year for the company in many, many ways. You declared commercial production at the Media Luna operation in Guerrero, Mexico in May. Cash flowing, the gold price is up. What will that project do for the company?
It's just been an absolutely extraordinary year for Torex Gold. I mean, this time last year we were at this conference. We had 6 months left to go on Media Luna. We were only 80% complete. This is our $1 billion build that took us 3 years to get through. And people were wondering whether we were going to make it, whether we were going to have enough money. As you said, we were cash negative this time last year. Every dollar we were producing out of ELG was going in to fund Media Luna. And so what a nice opportunity to come out of that at this year's conference. Media Luna is now behind us. We are free cash flowing again. And what that means now, Torex, in terms of the Morelos asset, has 10 years of mine life ahead of us at between 450 and 500,000 ounces of gold equivalent. And the cash flow that generates at spot prices is spectacular. We expect to be making full year 2026 around $450 million of free cash flow. That then becomes the engine of growth for Torex. We're able to turn that back into an intelligent M&A and return of capital for shareholders, which we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Jody, you're holding back. When we were talking before we went on air, you were talking about it's going to generate a crazy amount of money.
Yes, it is. $450 million free cash. That's after exploration spend and other spend. And what that does is positions Torex to then grow the company intelligently, return capital to shareholders, continue to back the drill bit at Morelos and some of the other assets we've acquired. And I would point out, Paul, one of the things that I think stands Torex out from some of our peers is that we funded this $1 billion project through cash flow from ELG at a time when the gold price wasn't what it was today. And so rather than do a capital raise and dilute our shareholders down or do a stream and give away some upside, we took on a modest amount of debt. We ended the project with $230 million of debt, $100 million of cash on the balance sheet, but $230 in debt. And so I think we're in excellent shape now. And structurally at Morelos, it's a little bit different from some of our peers. We don't have a big capital cycle to go through again. Let me tell you why that is. Media Luna itself is 3.3 million ounces at 4.5 gram a ton gold equivalent. As we were making design decisions on the Media Luna mine, we could see that there was going to be EPO to the north of that, Media Luna West, Media Luna East. And so what we did was size the infrastructure for power, for water, the 7-kilometer long tunnel that connects the mine to the processing plant, the conveyor through that tunnel. We sized it with the future in mind and with that upside in mind. And so EPO, our next new mine at Morelos, is the first example of how capital efficient the Morelos asset will now be. We put out a pre-feasibility study on EPO. The CapEx number for that, $82 million. There's 1.1 million ounces and measured and indicated there on that EPO. So 2,000 tons a day for $82 million at a pre-feasibility number, that is a spectacular return. So not only are we generating a lot of free cash, we've got a 10-year mine life out ahead of us, and structurally at Morelos, EPO is a blueprint for what we'll do there. It will do Media Luna East, likely next, Media Luna West, likely next. All of the heavy lift on our cornerstone, our flagship asset, all of the heavy lift on capital is behind us. So we are coming to this conference feeling pretty good that we deliver that project largely on schedule and on budget.
I imagine so. I don't want to sort of take a step back in time, if I may, Jody, because when you sort of came into the company, when you took over, I think it really illustrates the point of strategy and making good strategic decisions, because as you came into to run the company, there was a change of processing option, which is, in hindsight, has proven to be a very pertinent change to have made, choosing to go with a proven method that worked, rather than perhaps trying something that could have worked but was quite experimental. So strategy is a very key aspect there.
Yeah, I think strategy is really important. I think the even more important thing is execution capability. And I think that's where Torex really sets itself apart. So you can have the best strategy in the world and all big looking plans, but unless you can dial that in to execution year over year, quarter over quarter, then you have some really good ideas, but you don't have production and cash flow and a plan to back that up. And I think that's where Torex really excels. I think we're known in the marketplace for being excellent operators and for making commitments that we've delivered on. We've hit our guidance numbers 6 years in a row now, and we're planning to do the same here for 2025.
Now, I think the market is starting to recognize some of that success and that successful execution. Your share price is up about 110% year on year. Your market capitalization has grown to almost 5 billion Canadian. With the money that you're going to be making and generating, how does that change or influence your capital allocation policy, particularly as the metals prices get higher and higher? I imagine you're making more money than you budgeted for.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. We're actually generating so much cash flow. The way we're thinking about capital allocation is as follows. You want to continue to invest in mine life and margins, particularly at Morelos, that has a demonstrated history of success of converting resources to reserves. The asset there, we've produced 3.5 million ounces from Morelos since we started. There's 10 million ounces in the resource base, and the land package, 29,000 hectares, remains 75% unexplored. So you want to continue to back the drill bit, continue to invest in mine life and margins. So that's one of the areas of focus for capital allocation. The other area is centered around paying down debt. We came out of the Media Luna build with a modest amount of debt, $230 million. We don't really aspire to be debt-free, but why would you carry that on the balance sheet if you're generating the kind of cash we will be generating? The third bucket that we're thinking about is return of capital to shareholders. That comes in two forms. One is a buyback, the other is a dividend. We issued an NCIB late last year, and just about a month or so ago, when the share price was $41, we bought back $10 million worth of shares. We thought that was the last time we're going to see the Torex share price in and about that range. So we gave that a bit of a test drive. With Q3 results here, this will be our first free cash flow positive quarter post the Media Luna build. You can expect to see from Torex a better defined return of capital program, which will contain a small but sustainable dividend. The reason we want to issue a dividend is to get access to dividend-paying funds that we don't enjoy access to today. So that's a third priority. And the other priority is that we want to hold some firepower for M&A. If and as other companies do M&A and potentially some assets shake loose, we want to ensure that we're positioned to intelligently grow the company, but on a disciplined basis. We made 2 acquisitions this summer. One in the context of Reign of Silver, where we bought some early stage exploration assets. The second was Prime Mining. What we haven't yet added is another producing asset. So Torex continues to be interested in potentially some M&A to add a producing asset to the mix.
I thought your M&A strategy so far this year was quite intelligently executed, because you were known as a single asset producer that has a certain vulnerability to it. As and when you could, you immediately sort of began rectifying that by almost instantly putting in a pipeline. As you mentioned with Prime Mining, you've got a development stage asset, you've got a proven mine building team, you've got something else for them to go to work on. That makes a lot of sense. Reign of Silver, earliest stage, you've got some early stage exploration opportunities, very much a grassroots portfolio there, so perhaps a longer life opportunity there. You mentioned perhaps the desire to obtain another production asset. What is the strategy? With the 2 acquisitions you've done there, both in Mexico, where you have a lot of experience, you have a lot of relationships. So again, that makes a lot of sense. But it does give you a single country sort of vulnerability, if I can phrase it like that. What is the strategy to continue growing the company, to continue diversifying, shedding risk?
Yeah, we've always said we wanted to be America's focused. So think about Canada, the United States, Mexico, and some areas of Latin America that we've done some geopolitical assessment on that we're comfortable with. We've always said we wanted to stay in precious metals. With Media Luna coming on, we're producing about 45 million pounds of copper a year. So we've become a gold and copper producer. And then with the acquisition of Prime Mining, the acquisition of the Los Reyes asset, there's 75 million ounces in silver there in the resource. And so we feel like we have a good commodity balance. And you're right, these first couple of acquisitions has really focused on Mexico. That, I think, plays to our strategic and tactical advantage in country. We have a project team that just did a very difficult thing, a 3-year billion-dollar brownfield build. That is a complicated undertaking to deliver that largely on schedule and on budget. And now they're ready for the next thing. EPO is our next mine at Morelos, but that is not sufficiently complicated to keep this project team occupied. And so we thought we had a real opportunity here to get them on what's next. So the Prime team recognized that they've done their drilling. They've declared a 3 million ounce resource. 2 million ounces of that is in gold. 75 million ounces is in silver. And it was time for them to make a decision about, do we now take this to study ourselves? Do we do the PEA, PFS, and feasibility study and then try to mobilize a project team? Or do we find somebody that already has that? I think they made an excellent decision. We ended up acquiring that asset for roughly $326 million US at 3 million ounces gold equivalent. That's about $100 an ounce. And so I think what Torex brings to the good work the Prime team has already done is an example of really thoughtful, intelligent M&A in this sector.
In terms of taking Los Reyes forward, what's the timeline on that? And also with the cash you're generating, to what extent does that give you the ability to accelerate that timeline?
Yep. So the transaction is slated to be voted on at the end of September. Then we have to do some antitrust regulation approvals in Mexico. So we expect by probably November, December this year, we'll be the owners of the asset. The plan is to resume the drilling program and continue on the good work that the Prime team has done. My team has already extracted all of that information, the project team, and they're working away on a PEA. What we've said to the market is we'll have a PEA out no later than mid-2026. That will be the first showcase to the market of what we think we've really bought here. We'll take it through PFS through 27 and then on to feasibility study. And we say at a very high level with a lot of forward-looking qualifications here, we'd like to be mining there towards the end of the decade. And so that's how we're thinking about it. And you talk about allocating capital. One of the things that was really critical to the Torex team as we were assessing what project would be next is that we didn't want to go into another big cash negative cycle. We just got out of one through the billion-dollar build. So we think we've identified the CapEx that will take to build Prime. We can do it and stay cash positive and still deliver on the other capital allocation priorities that we've talked about today. So really a win-win, certainly.
Okay, I want to sort of take a little bit of a step back in Mexico and talk about the overall environment in Mexico because under President Claudia Sheinbaum, I think there was a lot of sort of trepidation when she took office that she would continue some of the policies of her predecessor which weren't too friendly towards the mining sector. It seems that hasn't played out that way. What is your experience of operating in Mexico under President Sheinbaum?
President Sheinbaum has been willing to listen and enter into dialogue with the mining industry. I think that's key. She's articulated some of the priorities of her forward-looking agenda, and they really are a nice nexus with the mining industry. What does that look like? She's a huge proponent of clean energy. Well, you need mining for that. She's got a big infrastructure agenda. You need the revenue generation from mining for that. She is deeply passionate about the environment, and miners have long since demonstrated that mining and being respectful and responsible to the natural environment can coexist. She also has a passion for eradicating poverty. What better way to address poverty in communities that are potentially outside of the reach of government, like where we operate in Guerrero, then have good, responsible miners create jobs and contracts and infrastructure to allow those communities to thrive, particularly in these gold price environments. I look at the work we've done in Guerrero around community and the natural environment. It is outstanding. And to know now that those communities have another 10 years of Torex mine life ahead of them, and then probably another 10 years behind that, that is generational impact. And so I think there is a lot of alignment between industry and the mining sector and the priorities of the Sheinbaum administration. And there is certainly a lot of willingness to have dialogue. So I'm very optimistic about it.
That's very good to hear. Now, Jody, you've been engaged in M&A this year. It sounds like you're continuing to look. So as you look at the gold sector, how do you see the competitive landscape evolving? We've seen Newmont and more recently Barrick divest some mines. The number of mid-tier companies has grown. A lot of those are in a position like you were a year ago, single asset companies without a portfolio. So presumably there's going to be a lot of companies chasing assets, chasing M&A. Presumably that will see premiums start crawling upwards or even rocketing upwards. How do you see the competitive landscape evolving?
I think it will be just that, very competitive, especially at the peak of the gold market, if we've in fact reached the peak. And you've seen some transactions done by some mid-tiers that have had very positive impact on their market cap and their share price. And so that will bolster some miners to bid and bid higher. I think one of the things that's really important to Torex is that we will remain disciplined. One of the big reasons we did all of the heavy lift of Media Luna is so that we didn't have to get backed into a transaction, so that we didn't have to do something. When you have 10 years of mine life out ahead of you, you know where your production and cash flow is coming from. You don't have to get into FOMO or concern and get into bidding processes where the value doesn't support it. And so as Torex goes into these processes, we will do the work, as we often do. We will do the work to understand where the value lives, where the risk lives, and we will remain disciplined. I think there are prices to chin up to, and there are prices to walk away from, and we will continue to do that as we go forward and look.
Well, it sounds like Torex won't be the company building or buying the marginal ounce too far, but obviously somebody will. When do you think we'll get to that point in this market?
When somebody builds or buys the marginal ounce, I think we're probably there. And I think that will continue to build on itself here as gold either holds at $3,600 an ounce or even goes higher. And so the environment really can create that kind of frenzy, if you will. And it is important that the sector remains responsible with our financial decisions, certainly.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground in our conversation today, Jody, but let's end with looking ahead. What are some of the key catalysts companies, so people can expect to see out of Torex over the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, this quarter 3, is going to be excellent from a production perspective, and we're going to be free cash flowing for the first time in a long time, so that's something to look forward to. Corollary to that will be our return of capital program, so our investors who have been with us for a long time will start to see the benefits of that. We will declare a dividend, so that is an exciting time. We will continue to back the drill bit at Morelos, at the Reyna assets that we acquired in Chihuahua and in Nevada. We will invest money there in exploration and drilling, so you can expect to see some news out of that. And then on the Los Reyes asset at Prime Mining, we will put out a PEA probably the early part of next year, so our investors will get a look at the value of what we got there. It's a very exciting time to be at Torex.
A lot of great things to come, and congratulations on a great 2025, a great execution so far this year. Jody Kuzenko, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a great run.
And we have a lot more to come from the 2025 Mining Forum Americas here in Colorado Springs, so hit that subscribe button. I'm Paul Harris, and this is Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Forum Americas is brought to you by Metallo Royalty and Streaming.